The war between humanity and the Kairathi Empire had dragged on for nearly 2 decades. It was a war no one truly wanted, sparked by a misunderstanding over star systems, resources, and pride. Entire fleets had been torn apart in the silence of the void, and planets had been burned in the name of peacekeeping. I was a soldier in that war once. My name is Lieutenant Marcus Hale, a linguist turned reluctant warrior. My specialty wasn't weapons or tactics, but voices, words, the subtle meanings tucked between syllables. I had studied over a dozen alien tongues before the war began, and when it did, my skills were deemed useful for interrogations. But nothing prepared me for her. We first encountered Princess Alira, heir to the Kairathi throne, when our scouts raided a derelict transport ship drifting in the neutral zone. The crew had been slaughtered by pirates, but she had survived, barely. Captured, injured, and terrified, she became humanity's most valuable bargaining chip. A living key to negotiations that had long since broken down. When I first saw her, she wasn't cloaked in royal finery. She sat in a steel cell, restrained, her shimmering skin dimmed from malnutrition. Kairathi physiology was elegant in a way that made humans seem clumsy. Tall, slender forms, bioluminescent markings tracing their arms and faces, like constellations come alive. But her eyes, wide and trembling, carried a fear I had seen too many times before. "Lieutenant Hale," my commanding officer had said. "You're up. Try talking to her. If she doesn't cooperate, the generals will force her hand another way." Understand? Understood all too well. They wanted information, military movements, codes, weaknesses. But when I stepped into that cold room, I didn't see a princess. I saw a prisoner. I spoke first in standard, then in fragments of Kairathi phrases I had studied. Her head lifted at the sound of her language, her bioluminescent patterns flickering faintly like fireflies. But she didn't respond. Days turned into weeks. I brought food, read fragments of poetry and songs I'd translated, and tried every way I could to reach her. First, she refused to eat. Then, cautiously, she began to take what I brought. She wouldn't answer questions, but I caught fleeting glances of curiosity when I mispronounced a word or sang a broken line from a Kairathi hymn. That was when I realized something. Music mattered to them. The Kairathi had an oral tradition older than their written one. Stories, treaties, even sacred vows were sung, not spoken. Words carried meaning, but melody carried truth. And though I was no singer, I decided to try. One night, while the base lights dimmed into artificial dusk, I sat outside her cell and began to sing. Not in English. Not in standard. In her language. The words were halting, clumsy on my tongue, but the melody I'd pieced together from their recordings wove something fragile between us. Her eyes widened, glowing with bioluminescent tears she hadn't shed until then. And then, softly, she whispered her first words to me. "Continue." Middle. After that, everything changed. Alira began to speak, slowly, cautiously. She corrected my pronunciations, sometimes with laughter, sometimes with a patient shake of her head. When I stumbled on tones, she sang the proper notes back to me, her voice crystalline and trembling. We built something fragile in that room, trust. She wasn't the monster my commanders painted her to be. She spoke of gardens on her homeworld where crystal flowers bloomed under twin suns, of songs sung by entire cities during their night festivals. She told me of her younger brother, still a child, whom she hadn't seen since the war began. But she also spoke of loss, of fleets burned by human hands, of civilians caught between military lines. She asked me once, her voice breaking, "Do your people sing for the dead as we do?" Had no answer. Because in war we didn't sing. We buried. We forgot. As days bled into months, command grew impatient. They wanted results. I gave them fragments, harmless cultural notes, old myths, anything to stall their hunger. But they pressed harder. She trusts you, Hale, Colonel Varick said. Use that. Get us fleet positions, defense grids, anything. She's a royal heir. She knows more than she lets on. But she didn't. Or if she did, I refused to ask. Because every time she said, continue, every time tears lined her face as I sang, I knew this was more than translation. This was survival, hers, mine, maybe both our people's. The breaking point came one night when she sang for me. Her song was unlike anything I'd heard. Haunting, layered, a melody that bent the air itself. My translator couldn't capture all the words, but I understood enough. It was a song of mourning. For her people. For the lives lost. And when she finished, she looked at me with wet, glowing eyes. Marcus, she said, my name heavy with an accent. Why do you sing our songs? Why do you not hate me? I swallowed hard. Because hate doesn't build anything. But songs, they can. She reached out then, slender fingers brushing against the barrier between us. And for the first time I wondered if peace was possible, not through treaties or weapons but through voices. But peace was the last thing command wanted. When they learned of her trust, they gave me a final order. Extract military secrets or they'd take her away. Interrogation by force. Torture if necessary. I couldn't let that happen. That night I returned to her cell, my heart pounding. Elira, I whispered. They're going to hurt you if we stay. We need to leave. Her eyes widened. Leave. Impossible. This place is iron. Fire. Not for long, I said. There's a shuttle. I can get us out, but only if you trust me. She hesitated. You would betray your own people. I shook my head. Not betray. Maybe if we reach your people together, if they see a human who tried to listen, we can end this war. For a long moment, silence hung between us. Then she whispered one word. Continue. Ending. The escape wasn't elegant. Sirens blared, alarms lit crimson across the corridors, and soldiers swarmed like hornets as we raced through steel passageways. Elira, weakened but resolute, clung to me as I fired stun rounds at comrades I'd once saluted. My chest ached with guilt, but every time doubt clawed at me, I heard her voice. Continue. We reached the shuttle bay under heavy fire. I took a hit across my shoulder, searing pain burning down my arm, but I forced the shuttle's hatch open and pulled her inside. Engines roared to life, and as we tore free from the station, I caught one last glimpse of Colonel Varick's face twisted in rage. The void swallowed us whole. For days we drifted toward Kairathi space, the shuttle running on scraps of fuel. Elira tended my wound with herbs from her satchel, humming healing songs in her tongue. I sang back when I could, my voice ragged, hers steady. Together, our voices filled the silence of the ship. At last, Kairathi vessels intercepted us. Their weapons locked, their shields shimmered, and I knew they would destroy us in an instant. But Elira stood tall, her bioluminescence blazing, and sang. Her voice carried through the comms, a royal hymn of recognition. The ships hesitated, and then miraculously they stood down.